All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and Utah just got a very strong win over FCS team Cal Poly. Cal Poly is a generally, solid FCS team, but when we look at this, it is important to look at it with a grain of salt because it is an FCS team. But we finished the game 63-9. So a really dominant win, and kind of like I talked about leading into the game, guys. This is what you're looking for: is just an impressive win that's not ever super competitive. And I think that's a great way to describe this game. The closest point I could say to where it felt like they were still in the game was when it was 21-6, middle of the second quarter. Excuse me, but then something happened here, something happened there, boom, bam. They throw the pick six to Jackson Benet, and all of a sudden we're up, 35-6. So it felt like that's kind of when that game got out of hand. And by halftime, we were clearly in the driver's seat. Very impressive game, and we have some big shout outs that we definitely need to discuss. What I'm going to talk about, guys, who really stood out to me on offense, who stood out to me on defense. We'll also talk about top 25, what this means for us, and what else happened around the bell. And then if I remember to, I'll also touch a little on the Big 12. What's the state of the Big 12 right now, right? There's a lot going on with the Big 12, and not starting off the year incredibly impressively, just to be honest with you there. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the defense. The first two guys I'm going to shout out are going to be on the pass rush side of things. Now, again, FCS competition, so take it with a grain of salt. But two guys that really stood out for me were John Henry Daly and Lance Holtzclaw. So they led the team in pressures, but more than that, so John Henry Daly only had 19 pass rush snaps, and he had 4 total pressures. So that's it's over a 20% pressure rate for for John Henry Daly. He turned it into 1 sack, 1 quarterback hit, and 2 hurries. So pretty impressive numbers there. But I think what gets you even more excited is when you look at Lance Holtzclaw. And actually, let me touch on John Henry Daly for another second. So as much as I'll talk about the actual numbers when I look at Lance Holtzclaw, and I actually think his pressure percentages are more impressive here, and he had quite a day. I think he kind of went under the radar, where I don't think a lot of people have been talking about Holtzclaw, but you look at these numbers, and he was getting back there, and he was disrupting the offense. But John Henry Daly, so now we have 2 weeks of him, back-to-back weeks of him clearly being a menace in the pass rush game. Guys, so like against UCLA, for his sample size, for players that had his range of at least ... number of snaps, he was 2% higher than anyone else. I believe it was like 15 to 20 pass rush snaps. Anyone else that had that type of volume, he had 2% more than them. Pressure percentage wise, so really impressive there. But touching on and just to close out on John Henry Daly, I know a lot of us are kind of feeling like we might have something special in this guy, and I'm going to go ahead and reinforce that this week. Yes, it's against FCS, but we're talking about a great week against Cal Poly, a great week against UCLA, followed up by another great week against Cal Poly. And this week was very impressive. The PFF grade right now is showing 89.6, but the numbers are showing just as much of an impressive story. I think the eye test is adding up. I think we are looking at a lot of good here. So pretty exciting, guys. John Henry Daly's definitely got to keep an eye on keep him on your radar as we get into conference play. He's looking very strong heading into the year. Next, taking a look at Lance Holtzclaw. Guys, Lance Holtzclaw, a guy that we all knew was coming in here to be a pass rush weapon. Well, it looks like he is living up to the hype. So today, Lance Holtzclaw had 15 pass rush snaps. And on those 15 pass rush snaps, he was able to create 4 pressures. So we're talking about a guy that was in the 25 to 30% range of what percentage of his pass rush snaps were of pressure. So we were talking about a guy that is getting back there and just ruining people's days. Very, very impressive number there. 4 pressures on 15 pass rush snaps. That's an intimidating guy and a guy you want to have on your team. So Lance Holtzclaw paying off as well. I don't think he had as impressive a week against UCLA. So with him, definitely take it with a grain of salt because it is against FCS competition. But I talked about him leading into the season. He is a pass rush specialist. That is what stands out about the guy. Taking a look at some other guys that impressed on defense, I want to give a shout out to a guy that really stood out to me today very strongly. He is our highest graded PFF player, I believe, on the team this week. Jackson, I I heard him say Benny today. I thought it was Benet, however you say it. I shouted him out last week, and I believe I kind of got ahead of the curve on this one, so I'm going to take credit for that. I noticed him last week, and I talked to you guys about that. Number 23, Jackson Benet, or Benny, however you say it. He was flying around the field. He was making plays, and he looked very good. And then this week, he follows it up with a pick six and multiple other plays where he got in there and made something happen. The stats, according to PFF, looking at him, he had 4 tackles, 1 assisted tackle, 1 stop, which is a neutral or negative play for the offense. He was targeted 7 times, allowed 4 receptions, so only a 57.1 reception percentage, so that's pretty decent. He did allow a 42-yard play, but he also had 2 pass breakups, which are very valuable, and had 1 interception, and then obviously got the 1, pick six, which was a huge momentum-changing play and a very impressive play. That's kind of what has been standing out about him for me, is that he flies around the field, he makes stuff happen, and he's always around the ball, right? That's when I'm spotting guys and noticing guys, it's like, hey, even if he's not making the play, he's just right there. It's just a guy that you can kind of rely on a bit, looking strong. Jonathan Hall as well didn't quite get a pick six, but he had an amazing play where he had a pressure that led to him deflecting the ball. So he got back there and was making the play on the quarterback when the quarterback was trying to throw. He deflects the pass. It pops up a little, and then he picks it off, and then he runs it to the 1-yard line, which I believe led to a touchdown for us. So really, really good play by Jonathan Hall there. He stood out. A guy that I would keep an eye on. Again, Jonathan Hall, he's played quite a bit for Utah. Hasn't become a star in any sense, but definitely got to keep an eye on. So we'll see how that goes as the season continues. Outside of that, nothing huge for Jonathan Hall. He was only targeted once and did not allow any catches. And if you're not getting targeted a lot, and he was on, how many coverage snaps did he have? He had 12 coverage snaps, so that's very impressive. So in 12 coverage snaps, he was only targeted once, which means he was on his man all the time. And he didn't allow any catches. So very impressive by Jonathan Hall there. Levani DeMooney also looked pretty damn good. There was one play I really liked by DeMooney. I know I posted on Twitter. I'm trying to remember the play. Boom. Oh, yeah. He got a pressure on the quarterback and just lit the quarterback up. I mean, damn, dude. If you guys remember that hit, DeMooney is back with a vengeance, man. And I love that we're kind of slow playing him. Don't rush him back in. He only played 19 snaps today. Nice and easy. Get him warmed up. Get him feeling good. And I think we're handling this perfectly. There's probably some other guys I'm going to miss that I should be shouting out. There's a couple stats I like to look for when it comes to shout outs. One other thing I didn't mention with John Henry Daly, he had 3 stops, which again are neutral or negative plays for the offense. So on top of that really crazy pressure rate, he had 3 stops. So very impressive there. Other guys that had some stops, again, neutral, negative, or negative plays for the offense. Brock Fanoy Moana, very cool to see him finally becoming a part of the team, getting out there. Cash Dillon, Tao Johnson. That's impressive for Tao Johnson to have 2 stops because it's from a safety position. So Cash Dillon's another guy I'm noticing on tape, just kind of flying around. Nate Ritchie also had 2 stops. Aliki Vamahi also had 2 stops. So Um, you know, looked like a very strong showing from the defense. So excited about that, guys. Next, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the offense from the game. So, offensively, I think we had some great performances. I'm going to touch on a couple things here. Boom, boom, boom. You know what? Let me pull up the stats. Give me 1 second here. Okay, guys, talking a little about the offense, I'm going to kind of break it down by position groups and player types. We'll start with quarterbacks. So, quarterbacks, I think they're clearly, two guys that got to play and two guys that impressed a lot. Devin Dampier, um, killed it against UCLA. Like I mentioned last week, couldn't ask for much more. And did a really good job today as well. You look at this, he had 26 dropbacks, 23 attempted passes, and 17 completions for a 73.9 completion percentage. Had quite a game here. Another really good showing. And I think, again, that's what you were worried about with Devin Dampier coming over. Would he be able to, move the ball through the air at this level? He also had 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a very, very good game. And another fun little stat here is for first downs, he had 10 first downs. So on 17 completions, more than half of those throws did go for first downs. And the reason I bring that up is they were important throws. They were throws where a play was made. So very cool. I thought Devin Dampier had a really good game. I don't think there's a ton to touch on with him. I think he's super accurate overall. I think his feet are a nightmare for opposing defenses. He didn't have a crazy amount of yards this game. Where is he rushing the ball? Devin Dampier. Yeah, so he had 27 yards on the ground on 3 rushing attempts. But again, with him, it's not just about the actual yards he has rushing. It's about the time he's creating back in the pocket. I think we saw a better blend of him avoiding big hits this week, because I think that was a legitimate criticism of him last week, where he was taking unnecessary hits. It's kind of a love-hate where I'm seeing, like, I love that he did tone it down for sure. Like, there was a couple times where he went out of bounds, where I feel like maybe last week he would have, went shoulder to shoulder with the player instead of going out of bounds, which is good to see that he, toning it down a little. But then I think there's also part of him that is just a tenacious player. Like, I can think of that one goal line play where he was trying to pound the rock into the end zone for a touchdown, and he just lowers his shoulder and flies at the guys and tries to get it in the end zone. He doesn't wind up getting it in, but it was a big physical hit. Like, you could feel it. I would imagine that one hurt. Like, that was an intense hit. He went all in to get that done. Didn't quite get it done, but Devin Dampier, another really good game, another really impressive showing. Excited to keep watching what he can become. Your offense lives and dies by their quarterback, and I think what we've seen in the early signs with Devin Dampier is really, really exciting. I'll give one criticism, because it's hard to complain about Devin Dampier. It's pretty damn good. One area I do see some improvement, and I think this is a fair criticism. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. When he throws screens, like bubble screens, wide receiver screens, stuff like that, a lot of this offense runs through screens. I would say confidently we're throwing, but the past 2 games I didn't count, but I feel like there's at least 3 to 5 screens a game, right? Where it's like he's throwing it out to a receiver within the first couple yards, and it's meant to be some sort of screen or screen-ish type of play, right? And I think he could improve his accuracy there. And specifically when it comes to leading receivers on a bubble screen type of situation. So on the bubble screen, how that works, if you guys aren't familiar, so imagine there's a receiver in the slot and there's a receiver on the outside. The receiver in the slot is going to run the bubble screen, which is kind of like a little half circle. So they kind of go behind the line, and then you throw them a screen that ideally is kind of hitting them right as they come to the second half of that half circle, and they're hitting it in stride and they're catching the ball and running. So a couple times I've just seen where Devin Dampier will hit that bubble screen, just not giving his guy a chance to catch it with some momentum. This was a big complaint about Isaac Wilson last year. And the year before was just him not hitting his guys in stride and just not making the offense run super well. So I think that's another one. And even on the wide receiver screens, I think he throws it a little behind him once or twice. Again, in general, it's very good, but this is, if I'm giving a criticism, it is something I've noticed, and I'd like to see that look a little better. Okay, so I could talk Devin Dampier all day. Super impressed, guys. The criticism is more just being nitpicky because it seems like the opponents we've gone against so far aren't extremely good. Obviously, an FCS team, and then UCLA. I believe they lost to UNLV today. Let me just confirm that. I'm pretty sure they did. Yes, they lost by 7 points to UNLV. I believe that was at home as well. Or no, this was at Allegiant Stadium. So this was at UNLV Stadium. UNLV is 3-0, and obviously they've had a huge rebound as of recently in the quality of their program. So not a terrible loss, but so far I think it's safe to say we haven't been strongly tested, right? And I'll put that one a little bit on me where I maybe was thinking UCLA is better than they are, but again, this early in the year we don't really know anything about anyone, so claiming that we do is dumb. Okay, continuing to go through the players. The next quarterback I want to discuss is Bird Ficklin. Again, this is an FCS team, so let's not overdo it, but the kid had a day. He had 5 dropbacks, 4 pass attempts, 4 completions, 100% completion percentage, 53 yards through the air, 13.3 yards per attempt. Again, that's 4 pass attempts, but still very impressive. Yeah, very, very good stuff. He had a crazy good PFF grade, 91.9. Again, super small sample size, so don't lose your mind about it. But he also had that giant run that a lot of us are probably very impressed with. He had 6 rushes for 54 yards. He had that huge one. I don't know how many yards it was. It has it right here. It shows what their longest run was. 38 yards, so a very, very impressive run. So Bird Ficklin had a really good day, and I think he definitely made me feel better about, like, hey, if he did have to come in and make some plays, I think he'd do a decent job. So I think that's exciting for the future. And I like that he got to get in there and get some snaps, right? Get his feet wet. So if someone else does need to come in, you never know what's going to happen. We learned that the hard way over these past few years. So better to plan for any possible problem. Running the ball, guys, we took it to him running the ball. We went for 275 rushing yards, and we had 9 people get at least 1 carry. So rushing attempts wise, the leader in rushing attempts, believe it or not, was Nate Johnson. Familiar face. He was, in there quite a bit today. And I would even say Nate Johnson was in there quite a bit when we had still important snaps. Now, I think the game plan is always against FCS is always going to be kind of, different because you expect to win the game. But you're still taking the game much more seriously early in the game. And Nate Johnson was in there as early as this. I definitely the second quarter, late in the second quarter. But if my memory's right, like it was like maybe 5 to 8 minutes left in the second quarter, we started to see Nate Johnson out there as a slot wide receiver, and then some trickery there, moving him around, getting him involved in the running game. So 5.4 yards a carry for Nate Johnson, and love to see that. So he actually had 34 yards after contact as well, so he was running tough. I thought he looked very good. He had one big run of 16 yards, so love to see Nate Johnson getting involved. Nakari Rogers, another guy that I've sung a lot of praises for. Nakari Rogers went for 4.4 yards a carry, 31 yards, and had 7 carries. Bird Ficklin had 6. Wayshawn Parker had 6 carries as well. He went for 50 yards. and one of those was a monster 43-yard run. So, when you consider there was 6 carries for him, and one of them was for 43 yards and a total of 50. He had one really big run, but outside of that, didn't do too much. But love to see him getting involved. Love to see him, going and making plays. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, so that's that for Wayshawn Parker. And then Hunter Andrews, he is a guy that I am enjoying getting involved, right? I'm enjoying watching Hunter Andrews play. He is a very athletic player. He got 5 carries for 21 yards, 4.2 yards a carry, one touchdown, or no touchdown, sorry, misspoke. But looks very athletic when he gets the ball. Had 9 yards after contact today. Looks very, very strong. So very strong. Actually, 10 yards after contact. Sorry about that. With a long run of 7 yards. But a guy that I don't mind seeing getting involved. I'm pretty impressed when I do see the ball in his hands. Outside of that, I don't think there's anyone else worth mentioning too much. Bryce Duke got some carries. Not super familiar with him. Smith Snowden got a couple carries as well. So I'd love to see him continuing to get involved in the offense. And Racing Guillory had 1 carry as well for 4 yards. Now, continuing on with the offense, the tight ends continue to be a really big part of this offense, but we did see the wide receivers get quite a bit more involved today and actually kind of dominate the overall touches in the passing game. So let's talk a little bit about that. So taking a look here, guys. Ryan Davis today, he's a guy that I have been excited about all year and heading into the season. Ryan Davis really, really went off today. So he had 7 targets, 6 receptions, so 85% catch percentage on those targets. Yards per route run, he was, is it on here? Yards per route run. Yeah, yards per route run, he was 2.32. So for a guy that had as many snaps as him, he had snaps. Didn't I say snaps? Oh yeah, passing snaps, he had 26. So very impressive there. Ryan Davis, a guy that I'm a fan of. I like to see him out there getting touches. I like to see him getting involved, and I think he's starting to establish himself as a powerful receiver here. Tobias Merriweather definitely making plays, and I think I might have a different opinion on this guy than some others, but definitely making plays. He's a guy that a lot of people are really excited about. He is a big athletic player. Where I'm a little not loving it is he had 6 targets and 3 catches on those targets. So that's a pretty rough. It's a 50% reception percentage on the targets. That's the worst of anybody on the team. To be fair, he had the second most targets out of anyone on the team, and he was playing a role for the team where it feels like we do try to force some targets over to him to just try to get him to do something. But I just got to be honest with you guys. I'm not super impressed. I think there's a lot of potential there, and you can see it at times. And when he makes the big plays, he did have 37 yards on those 3 catches. You see it. But he also had a pretty bad drop where he tried to catch it with his chest. I didn't love that. So hopefully he can keep turning it up. But I do like that at least we got Ryan Davis involved, so we have a little safety blanket there. Hunter Andrews, again, a guy that's been getting some touches on the ground, also had 3 targets for 3 catches and 19 yards, 6.3 yards per catch. Very, very impressed with Hunter Andrews to start the year. Excited to see how he can continue to grow his role in the offense. I believe both weeks now he's gotten 5+ touches, whether it's through the air or on the ground. So I like to see that. Smith Snowden had 3 catches, 3 targets, 3 catches for -2 yards. So, not quite the offensive firepower he brought last week. Dallin Bentley, though, a good game. 3 targets, 2 catches, 35 yards on those targets and catches. Had a touchdown. So, very impressive. Dallin Bentley. The tight ends continue to be a dominant force between the two of them. Bentley and Andrews, that's 6 catches. Lander Barton, also a guy you could count as a tight end. He had 1 catch, 1 target for 8 yards. Nakari Rogers had one huge reception for 32 yards. Wayshawn Parker had a huge reception for 52 yards. So nearly, I think it's over 100 yards of total offense for Wayshawn Parker. Big game for him. Otto Tia had one target, one catch, just 6 yards there. So that's kind of that. That's it with the receivers. Let's take a look at the O-line. Just to give you guys a quick rundown there. I won't spend too much time talking about it. All right, boom. Okay, pressures allowed. Okay, I mean, it looks like our offensive line did very, very well. The grades kind of range all over the place, but I don't think there's anyone I would shout out as doing a poor job, at least from what I'm seeing on the numbers. So good there. And we got a lot of different guys, a lot of snaps. So good look there. Okay, so that is it with the offense. Next, we will talk about the top 25 and talk about how the Big 12 is looking as a whole and, kind of what's going on there. So stick around. Okay, guys, taking a look at the top 25, I think there is a lot of interest here from Utah fans. I know I feel that way. Excuse me. Taking a look at the numbers. So Utah came in at 25 this past week, and I'm going to go ahead and imagine we're moving up after a 63-9, very dominant showing over a solid FCS team in Cal Poly. Let's talk about who in front of us might have underwhelmed a little so far. So right out the gate, I'm just going to kind of go down the line with the teams in front of us. So looking at the lineup here, we have SMU. SMU lost today. Let me pull up that matchup. SMU lost today, and I don't think it was to a very good team either. Oh, so it was to Baylor, which is cool. It was a double overtime loss for SMU, and I believe it was at home for SMU. Sawyer Robertson went off on them, 440 yards, 4 touchdowns. So pretty clearly, we should be jumping above SMU. I'm also gonna, point out Iowa State again. I've heard people say Iowa State is the best team in the Big 12. I just want to address that. Iowa State, I don't think they're terrible, and I think after another win this week, they're trending in the right direction. But I still think there's just so much to be proven with Iowa State. There's just been nothing to really impress me, guys. Looking at Iowa State, it's just they just won to Iowa, and it was 16-13. Now, Iowa is a very good defensive team, but I think no matter who the team is across from you, to only put up 16 points is, a little embarrassing. And then that's another week where they only won by 3, right? Their only 2 FBS games are Kansas State and Iowa. They barely beat each team, 3-point wins, and Kansas State almost got beat by an FCS team a couple weeks ago. So I would just say, in my opinion, we should clearly be higher than Iowa State. Now, I'm not saying Iowa State shouldn't be in the top 25. Is what it is there. I'm surprised they're as high as they are. I think it's a little odd. Okay, next up is going to be, as we creep towards the top of this list, it's going to be a little more exciting. So Oklahoma beat Michigan. So Oklahoma is going to jump up big time. Oklahoma was number 18 and Michigan was number 15. And, it's a big win, 24-13. Oklahoma beats Michigan. I mean, to me, that should justify us leaping Michigan. Don't get me wrong, Oklahoma's a good team, the number 18 team in the country heading into this week. But if you just got beat by 11 points, to me, I personally think that, I know early in the year it is different, and we want to give these teams some benefit of the doubt, so we're not just knocking them out of the top 25 because it's hard to climb back up. But to me, that feels like one I could see the reason to say they might be one or two spots above us still, Michigan. But to me, I mean, they were number 15, we were number 25. We had another dominant week, yes, against an FCS, but you can only beat the people in front of you. And they lost by 11 points to a team ranked only 7 spots ahead of us. So that's how I see it. Anyways, the two big ones that are going to shake up the rankings are as follows. Florida. Florida went played USF at home, so they were in the swamp. USF came to the swamp, and Florida got beat 18-16. Florida is probably going to plummet after that one. South Florida USF is an unranked team. I expect Florida to maybe drop out of the top 25 after that. That's a big one. Arizona State, another tough one, and this is another Big 12 type of situation where a team that was thought to be one of the best teams in the Big 12, they lost to Mississippi State. Now Mississippi State is SEC, but you're the number 12 team in the country. You shouldn't be losing to them. They lost 24-20, so a tight loss, but still a big loss for the Sun Devils there. And they haven't looked extremely impressive like I talked about. Their win over an FCS team was not a cut and dry check mark, great performance. It was, it was good, but you wanted to see more. Notre Dame, what is going on here? I think Notre Dame, did they play this week? No, Notre Dame played last week. They were off this week, so don't worry about them. Okay, yeah, so that's about that. Clemson's probably worth just touching on. Obviously, I don't think we'll leapfrog Clemson because Clemson did win. They're the number 8 team this week, and they won 27-16 over Troy. I believe it was at home. But more than that is they were down 16-3, I believe, at halftime in that game. So I expect Clemson to drop at least a few spots. Like, that was a pretty scary game for Clemson. It did not look like they were going to win that game, at least when halftime came around. So that's kind of that with the top 25 guys. I would expect the way the rankings play out, we're going to go up quite a bit from a lot of the teams in front of us. We're going to probably move up quite a few spots. I expected us to already move up quite a few spots. I think the other factor if I'm playing both sides of that coin is UCLA does not look great. And our wins right now, albeit they're big wins, they are against a team that just lost to a G5 team and FCS team. So, is what it is there. But I guess we'll see where we wind up in the top 25 this week. But exciting to see. I'll be 50-50 whether I personally think we should be in the top 20. I feel like we're justified to be in that 18 range, but I get it. I mean, I just saw a lot of politics, and this stuff will kind of shake itself out as the weeks just keep going by. It's just annoying to have to wait. So hopefully we wind up there. I could see a world where they keep us in the low 20s, but I think we should definitely be in the teens. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Stick around. We'll talk a little bit of Big 12 action and what is going on in the Big 12. A lot of upsets this week. A lot of shakiness in the Big 12. Let's talk about it. Okay, guys, now we are looking at the Big 12 to wrap everything up here. Let's take a walk down these numbers. So some of these we already touched on a little bit. So I'll give my thoughts and a little deeper action, but just kind of give my thoughts in general at the end here on the state of the Big 12. Okay, Baylor beats SMU at Dallas. Huge win here. Baylor goes to Dallas against number 17 SMU. Beats them in double overtime by 3 points. But I also think more than that, guys, Sawyer Robertson just looks very good. Looks like a potential like big time quarterback if he's not already. I mean, this guy is tearing it up through the year through the air. I believe that's 4 games in a row for him with 400 plus passing yards. It is a handful of people that have ever done that. So looks very impressive, guys. Keep an eye out for Baylor. I will be surprised if Baylor is not a team to watch, and if Sawyer Robertson is not poised for a special season. Iowa State 16-13 win over Iowa. I touched on that. Iowa State continues to win, but continues to do it unimpressively. Yeah, I'm feeling like Iowa State is not a team I'm worried about. I think it's a little crazy that people are saying they're the best team in the Big 12. I don't see it. Texas Tech, though, continues to prove that they might be one of the best teams in the Big 12. 24, they're the number 24 team. They're ranked one spot above us. They had a 62-14 win against Kent. These are the Kent Golden Flashes. That is a huge win, right? That is a really big time win. 62-14, dominant. They're making statements. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up a little bit. I feel like you look at the standings here. You go over those first 3 teams. Iowa State, I might think they're overrated, but a lot of people feel good about them. Baylor looks very good with Sawyer Robertson at the helm. And Texas Tech continues to put up great performances. For me, it's hard to argue outside of Utah that Texas Tech isn't one of the best teams in the Big 12. Cincinnati 34-20 win over Bowling Green. Cincinnati continues to have an underwhelming Big 12 presence. Just not, ever since they went on that championship, college football playoff run, they just haven't been the same. They lost a ton of talent and have had a lot of trouble rebuilding. Colorado 31-7 win over Delaware. Delaware new to FBS, but still a good win over an FBS team. Very strong win, so good for Colorado. That's a good look there. Good bounce back win there. Mizzou 42-31 win over Kansas. Kansas is a team that a lot of people are high on. They're still 2-1 on the season. But I would say, an 11-point loss to a Mizzou team's not a great look. Not that Mizzou's not a solid program. Actually, they have been pretty damn good in recent years, so is what it is. I'd still expect Kansas to be a pretty good team. These next 2 are 2 of the, just nightmares of the week. I'll start with this one because it's pretty wild, but the other one's like crazy. You guys probably know the 2 I'm talking about. So Ohio and West Virginia play in Ohio, in Athens. So the Bobcats, Ohio Bobcats, not Ohio State, Ohio. West Virginia, the Mountaineers head down there and lose 17-10. So a somewhat close game, but 17-10 loss against a G5 team. Not what you want to see. I think if you're a West Virginia fan, that is just heartbreaking. It is not a good foreshadowing of the season, and not a good look for the Big 12 either, guys. Not a great week in Big 12 national respectability, and this next one's going to be the real icing on the cake on why that is. Okay, guys. So Oklahoma State headed to Eugene, Oregon, for their game this week, heading in there 1-0, and gets, how should I put this? Gets obliterated, 69-3. Mike Gundy, whatever special sauce or magic, formula he used to have, does not seem to be working. A lot of people would talk about how he and Kyle Whittingham were kind of 2 peas in a pod, like it's 2 similar guys. I'm not seeing it because I've seen some rough games for Utah. I've never seen 69-3. I mean, what in the world? That is rough, dude. Being a fan and seeing that this early in the season, the season isn't written in stone yet, but gosh, man, that is a rough look. That is awful. And trust me, if anyone knows how Oregon can get away from you and beat you pretty badly, it's Utah fans. And they are very talented, but they made them look like an FCS team. I mean, Oregon had a better point differential and more points against Oklahoma State than we had against Cal Poly, and that's saying something. Okay, next up, continuing the disappointment trend, Kansas State, I believe it was at home, They played Army and they lost 24-21 against Army. Rough look there, guys. Kansas State, again, this is why I believe Iowa State seems to be a paper tiger. They barely beat Iowa State. I mean, they barely beat Kansas State, and Kansas State, another rough loss, right? 1-2 for Kansas State. I believe it was at home. Someone can confirm that in the comments, but I believe that was at home for Kansas State. So rough look there. Yeah, man. I thought, Kansas State seemed like they were trending in a decent direction. Early in the season, we don't know yet, but Kansas State looks to be a pretty bad team. And that's, again, why I'm not that impressed with Iowa State. Okay, Houston, 35-9 win over Rice. Big win for Houston. And, right down the street is Rice. So good for in-state recruiting. You got to love to see that. UCF, huge dominant win, 68-7 over NCAT. Whoever the hell that is, definitely FCS. Okay, and then I'll talk about two more big wins. Then we'll talk about another disappointing one. Arizona, 48-3 win over Weber State. Weber State is a very good FCS team, continues to be a high contender in FCS play year after year. So big win there. And then BYU at home dominates Stanford 27-3. So really, really good look there by those two teams, and a strong showing by some Big 12 teams. But then we got the icing on the cake here, the team that a lot of people were high on heading into the year, Arizona State, number 12 team in the country this week, and they lose to Mississippi State at Davis Wade Stadium. So rough go there, 24-20. Not a beatdown for ASU, but still a bad look to lose that early in the season against not a Mississippi State's not a world beater. They're not a bad team. They're in a good conference, but you want to see more. So that's kind of is what it is, guys. I think the Big 12 is in a weird spot right now. I think some of these performances are just honestly kind of embarrassing. Like what happened this week. I mean, West Virginia and Kansas State losing to Army in Ohio. What else happened? I mean, those are probably the big ones. Let's be real. West Virginia. Oh, and then obviously Oregon just destroying Oklahoma State. So pretty rough, guys. I'm gonna get out of here. Like the video. Comment down below. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on our top 25 ranking, on what the Big 12, what's going on right now. Also, what did you think about the performance this past week on offense and defense? Anyone I missed shouting out? Love to hear your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We put out a ton of Utah Utes football content. We do a pregame and a postgame every week, and if that's what you're into and you like some analytics, you like deep diving a bit, make sure you stay tuning in. I am out of here, and go Utes.